All right, let's talk about a word you've probably heard a million times by now, Web3. It's everywhere. But what does it actually mean? Is it really the future, or is it just a lot of hype? Well, over the next few minutes, we're going to cut through all that noise. We'll build a really clear picture of what Web3 is, how we even got here, and why it's stirring up such a huge debate. So let's just dive right in.
You know, to really get where we're going, we have to understand where we are right now. And this comment from a Reddit user, I think it just hits the nail on the head. Think about it. Most of our digital lives happen inside these little boxes, right? An Instagram box, a TikTok box. That feeling of the wide open, kind of wild internet, it feels different now, doesn't it? It feels more, contained. And that feeling is the perfect place for us to start.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about this walled garden internet we live in. Then we'll properly introduce Web3. After that, we'll zoom in on one really big idea, your digital ID, to make it all feel real. Then we'll weigh the promises against the reality, and finally, we'll look ahead to what might be next.
All right, first up, the walled garden internet. Because to understand why people are calling for a new web, you got to understand the one we use every single day.
The web has had a few different lives, right? First, back in the 90s, we had Web 1.0. You can think of it like a giant read-only digital library. Tons of static pages you could look at, but you couldn't really do much with them. Then came Web 2.0, the read-write web. This is the internet we all know and love, or, the one we use. Social media, blogs, YouTube, suddenly we were all creators. But that shift led us directly to where we are today, with just a handful of massive companies hosting pretty much everything.
The architecture that makes all this possible is called centralization. It just means all our pictures, our posts, our connections, they all live on servers owned and controlled by a single company. They build the playground, we get to play in it. And this model won out for one very simple reason. It's just so easy. It's incredibly convenient.
And that really boils down to this one simple trade-off we all made, most of us without even thinking about it. We got these amazing, seemingly free services, and in exchange, we handed over the keys. We gave up control of our own data. We chose convenience, and because we did, the web became centralized.
So that's the problem. And that brings us right to our second section, introducing Web3. It's a vision for a totally new web, one built on a completely different foundation, specifically designed to fix the problems that centralization created.
So what is it really? Well, at its heart, Web3 is this idea to rebuild the internet using decentralized tech, like a blockchain. So instead of your data living in Google's private vault, imagine it's copied into a shared public notebook, a notebook that's held by thousands of computers all over the world, where no single person can just erase a page. The whole goal is to shift that power away from the big platforms and put it back in the hands of users, giving us actual, real ownership of our stuff.
This slide right here, this is the whole game. It simplifies everything perfectly. Web 1.0, you could read. Web 2.0 came along and added write. The big revolutionary promise of Web 3 is adding that final crucial word, own. It's about having a real, verifiable, digital claim to the things you create and do online.
So these are kind of the big four ideas, the pillars holding up the whole Web3 vision. Decentralization, so no one company can just shut things down. Ownership, so you're actually in the driver's seat with your own data. Transparency, because the rules of the game are written on a public blockchain for everyone to see. And permissionless, which means anyone, anywhere, can build something new without having to ask a gatekeeper for permission first.
Okay, I know that all sounds a little abstract, right? Decentralized, permissionless. What does it mean for you? So let's make it real. Let's move to Section 3 and focus on one single concrete idea, your digital identity.
Just think about it for a second. The last time you downloaded a new app or signed up for a service, what did you do? You got to the login screen and you probably saw two choices. Create a whole new password that you're definitely going to forget, or just click that super easy login with Google or login with Facebook button. We all do it.
So here's the difference, side by side. Right now, in Web 2.0, our identity is basically rented from these big companies. They control the login, they own the data, and they can shut you down anytime they want. The Web 3 proposal is to replace that system with a personal crypto wallet. Think of it like a secure digital keychain that only you hold the key to. That wallet becomes your universal passport to the internet. You own it. You control it.
And here's the bottom line. The problem with login with Google is that, well, Google owns your login. We've basically outsourced our digital identities. And if they decide to delete your account, poof, your access to every other service you've connected to it could be gone just like that.
You don't truly own your online self.
Okay, but this is the #1 question everyone asks, and it's a really good one. If there's no central company with a forgot password button, what on earth happens if you lose your private key? You know, that one single password that unlocks everything? That's a huge, huge problem.
And this is where the tech gets pretty clever. The proposed solution is something called social recovery. So instead of trusting a company to reset your password, you choose your own trusted guardians ahead of time. It could be your best friend, your parents, or even just other devices you own. If you lose your key, you just need a majority of them to vote to confirm it's really you, and boom, your access is restored with a brand new key. It's like having your own decentralized help desk.
And this quote from Vitalik Buterin, the co-founder of Ethereum, really nails it. The point of Web3 isn't to crave a world with zero trust. It's about giving you more choices in who or what you trust, instead of being forced to put all your faith in one giant corporation.
Now, for this to be a real explainer, we can't just talk about the promises. We have to get into the big debate. So, let's move to Section 4, Web3's promise versus its current messy reality.
So you've got two main camps here. On one side, the supporters see this bright future, a more democratic web where we all own our data, big tech has less power, and maybe we even get paid for our online contributions. But on the other side, the critics are, well, they're pretty skeptical. They argue that Web3 isn't really decentralized at all, it just shifts power to a new group of venture capitalists. They worry about turning every single online click into some kind of financial asset, and they rightly point out that the tech just isn't ready for prime time yet.
And look, this isn't just a bunch of tech folks arguing on the internet. This conversation has gone all the way to the top. The U.S. Congressional Research Service is actively looking into Web3, asking some really important questions about how to regulate it, how to protect people's privacy, and what to do about the massive energy consumption of some of these technologies.
And you know, some of the loudest critics are the people who actually built the web we use today. Jack Dorsey, the co-founder of Twitter, has been very vocal, arguing that Web3 isn't really owned by the people. He says it's owned by the venture capital firms pouring billions into it. It's a really powerful critique, this idea that we might just be trading one set of bosses for another.
So, where does all of this leave us? Let's wrap things up with our final section. What's actually next for the web? Because this is a story that is very much still being written.
I think the single most important thing to remember is this. Web3 is not a light switch. It's not some finished product that's going to replace the internet tomorrow. It's much better to think of it as a collection of emerging ideas and new tools that are probably going to live right alongside and compete with the Web 2.0 platforms we already use every day.
And that really brings us full circle, all the way back to that fundamental trade-off we talked about at the beginning, control versus convenience. Is the promise of a truly user-owned internet worth giving up the easy, seamless experience we've all gotten so used to? Honestly, there's no simple answer, but your choice and the choices of millions of people just like you are what will ultimately decide the next chapter of the web.